The forest is full of doves, but they're not birds anymore. The first time I saw the doves, they were beautiful, too beautiful. Silky white feathers that shimmered like glass, ruby red eyes that gleamed unnaturally, and wings that flapped without sound. They didn't coo. They whispered. I was visiting my grandmother's cottage for the summer, deep in the forest where cell signals die and stories are carved into tree trunks. Nana always warned me, never feed the doves, child. They remember. I thought she meant the usual forest wildlife, like don't feed bears or raccoons. But she said it with such grim certainty that her voice stuck in my head long after. On my first morning, I wandered past the berry bushes and into the clearing. That's when I saw them, perched in perfect stillness on the branches above, as if watching. Not moving, not blinking. At least 24. I stared too long. One blinked. When I told Nana, her hands trembled as she poured the tea. You didn't whistle, did you? She asked sharply. They come to the sound of human breath. You must never whistle out there. I hadn't. Not yet. That night I woke to scratching at the window. Not the kind made by claws, but like feathers. Brushing. Stroking. I pulled back the curtain, and there they were. All of them. Sitting motionless on the trees, on the roof, on the fence. Eyes glowing red in the moonlight. One was perched just inches from the glass, head tilted slightly as if trying to understand what I was. I closed the curtain and didn't sleep the rest of the night. By morning, the forest was alive with whispers. Not wind, not birdsong, just a soft, persistent murmuring. As if 100 mouths were muttering behind leaves. Nana refused to open the door. She sprinkled salt across every threshold. She hung silver wind chimes she'd never used before. Something's stirring them, she whispered. And they only stir when someone is marked. Marked for what? I asked. She stared at me with eyes that had seen too much. You. Nana didn't speak for hours after that. She sat by the fireplace, rosary in one hand, the other trembling on her lap. The forest outside was silent now. Too silent. The kind of quiet that pressed against the walls like a weight. I kept peeking through the curtains. The doves were gone, but the branches still swayed, as if something moved just out of sight. By evening, I grew restless. I needed air. Against Nana's pleas, I slipped out the back door with a flashlight and crept toward the clearing. I told myself it was just superstition. Just birds. But I saw them again, more of them this time. Their wings barely moved as they hovered in place, suspended like puppets with invisible strings. One landed in the grass near me, but it didn't peck the ground or flutter. It watched. I turned to run, only to freeze. One of them wasn't a bird. It had feathers, yes. But its face was human. A child's face, twisted in some expression between fear and longing, emerging from the breast of the dove like it had grown there. Its tiny beak opened, but no sound came. Only a voice inside my head. You see us now. I stumbled back, heart racing, but the doves didn't follow. They just watched. I didn't scream, I couldn't. My throat had locked up with a cold that didn't belong to summer. When I made it back, Nana was already waiting at the door with her lantern lit and her hands shaking. They showed you their face, she said before I could speak. It's starting. What is starting? I asked. She sat me down and spoke with a voice like dry leaves. They aren't birds. Not anymore. They used to be people, children, mostly. The forest keeps them. Anyone who gets too close. Anyone who listens when they whisper. The doves are how the forest marks its own. I shook my head. But why me? She reached out and touched the side of my face, just below my ear. There, etched faintly into my skin, was a shape. A feather. Not drawn, not painted. Grown. You've been marked, she said. You're hearing them now. And once you start hearing them, they never stop. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard them, not outside, but inside my head. A soft cooing that unraveled into something like a voice. A voice calling my name in tones that weren't human. whispered syllables that curled in my ears like smoke. By morning, the mark behind my ear had darkened. It itched constantly, pulsing like it was alive. Nana forbade me from going outside. She covered every window with bedsheets, lit candles in every corner, and spoke words under her breath I'd never heard before. But it didn't help. Nothing could keep the voices out now. By mid-afternoon, the cooing changed. It became a chant. They were telling me things. Names. Places. One name repeated again and again. Emile. I finally asked Nana, "Who's Emile?" She froze. "Emile was your uncle," she whispered. "My youngest brother. He vanished when he was 8. I told everyone he drowned. But I knew the truth. He followed the doves into the forest, same as you." A knot twisted in my stomach. Did he ever come back? She hesitated, her eyes watering. No. But he did speak to me years later. In my sleep. Just once. He said, "It's not so bad here. The trees remember us." The wind picked up outside. The bed sheets over the windows swelled like lungs. Something knocked, softly, at the back door. We both turned. The knocking came again. Rhythmic. Almost polite. I crept to the door, ignoring Nana's hissed protest. I pressed my ear against the wood. Silence. Then, tap tap tap. I held my breath and slowly cracked the door open. There on the step sat a dove. But it wasn't alone. In its claws it held a photograph. Old and curling at the edges. I picked it up with shaking fingers. It was a picture of a young boy, maybe 8 years old, standing in front of the very same forest, smiling at the camera. The same feathery birthmark on his neck as the one behind my ear. On the back, written in shaky handwriting, were the words, "Emile is waiting." I turned to Nana, my voice shaking. "He wants me to come." Her face went pale. She backed away like I'd just spoken in tongues. "That's not Emile anymore," she whispered. "That's the forest, wearing his skin." That night the house groaned like it was trying to breathe. Nana locked herself in her bedroom, whispering prayers I didn't recognize. She slid a small knife beneath my door, a charm she called it, and begged me not to follow the voices, not to answer the tapping, no matter how gentle it sounded. But I was already too far gone. The forest was in me now. Every creak of the trees echoed in my bones. The chanting of the doves pulsed through the walls, a lullaby sung in reverse. I stood at the window, eyes fixed on the tree line. Shapes moved between the trunks, tall, thin, not quite human. Sometimes with wings. Sometimes with too many eyes. And always, always, they watched me. When the knock came again, tap tap tap, I didn't hesitate. I stepped outside barefoot, the night cold but not biting. The world felt strangely still, like it was holding its breath. The dove waited on the path, Emile's photo still clenched in its claws. As I walked, it took flight, fluttering silently just ahead of me, leading me deeper into the trees. The forest greeted me like an old friend. The deeper I went, the more wrong everything felt. The trees were too symmetrical. The branches seemed to bend toward me. And the doves, dozens of them, watched from above, their heads turning in unison. Their eyes glinted like glass, hollow and unnatural. Then I saw it. A clearing, perfectly round. In the center stood a tree blackened with age, wide as a house, and covered in hanging cocoons that shimmered faintly in the moonlight. I stepped closer and realized they weren't cocoons at all. They were husks, thin, dry skins like shed clothing. And inside some of them, things still moved. The dove landed on my shoulder. I should have flinched. But I felt nothing. No fear. Only calm. Then I saw him. Emile. He stood beneath the tree, barefoot, face pale, eyes distant. A smile too wide stretched across his lip. "Welcome back," he said softly. "You're the last. We've all been waiting." I opened my mouth, but no sound came. Only feathers spilled out. White, soft, endless. The doves above began to sing. And it wasn't a song of mourning. It was a greeting. I tried to scream, but more feathers spilled from my throat, soft, suffocating, endless. Emile stepped closer, eyes glowing faintly, not from any light, but from something inside. His hands, once familiar, were too long now, fingers like willow branches swaying unnaturally as he reached out to touch my cheek. "You remember now, don't you?" he whispered. And I did. Not everything. Just flashes. The old well at the forest's heart. The pact whispered in dove-song. The night Emile disappeared, I'd been with him. We'd crossed a ring of stones we were never meant to see. He stepped in willingly. I hesitated. I ran. And I left him behind. Now the forest wanted balance. "I don't belong here," I choked out between feathers, my voice barely a hiss. "I'm not like you." But the doves were no longer in the trees. They were on the ground. Dozens of them circled the clearing, heads twitching as they walked upright on 2 human feet. Their feathers fluttered like robes, but their faces weren't avian. They wore memories, the faces of people who vanished from our town. Friends, hikers, hunters, a schoolteacher, a child. Each face smiled, the expression stretched and frozen like a mask. "You always belonged here," Emile said, guiding me to the center of the clearing where the blackened tree loomed. Its bark peeled like old skin. At its base sat an opening, like a hollow mouth, breathing gently. Inside I saw wings. Dozens. Maybe hundreds. Pale and pulsing. Waiting for someone to fill them. The doves gathered around, their humming rising in pitch, becoming a chant, a name. My name. I ran. Or tried to. But the roots surged from the ground like snakes, wrapping around my ankles. I was dragged backward, the earth itself resisting escape. My fingers clawed at the dirt, pulling up feathers. Always feathers. Then, a voice. Nana's. Sharp, clear, rising over the song like a blade through mist. She stood at the tree line, holding the same knife she'd passed to me. Her arms bled, and in her blood she drew symbols on the earth. Old ones. Forbidden ones. The doves screamed. The roots recoiled. Emile's smile cracked, literally, splitting his face as smoke poured from his eyes. The illusion shattered. The forest twisted, howled, and spat me out. I awoke on Nana's porch. Alone. Safe. But far above, circling the woods, a single dove remained, watching. And it wore Emile's face. Still smiling. Still waiting.